My son-in-law pointed at my husband by the lake and snapped, "He's not your true grandpa," and my grandson's small shoulders folded. I didn't argue. I knelt to the boy steady as a lighthouse and said, "Family is who shows up and stays." Then I did what a seasoned mother does. I began quietly collecting the truth names on the bills, times on the logs, and one card at the podium that would speak louder than any mic. That was only the first stone in a wall that would turn the weekend on its head. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. The resort lobby smelled faintly of pine and lemon oil, a cool breath against the heat that still clung to my shoulders. Slate under the wheels of my suitcase made a soft drum, and the glass doors sighed shut behind us. Timber beams arched overhead like an old chapel. Arliss tipped his cap to no one in particular the way he does when he's deciding where to stand. I watched for who was running the show. Not the clerks. My son-in-law Duran was the one pointing, smiling, corralling. He loves a clipboard even when it's an app. Some people relax at check-in. Duran performs. I tucked my chin and counted people bags minutes until dinner. Kyron would be hungry by 6. My stake was simple: keep our grandson's weekend easy and keep Arliss included without making a scene. I've learned that in families, the most dangerous thing is not shouting. It's quiet rearranging dressed up as logistics. I set my suitcase brake and breathed once, twice. Indira at the front desk tapped a tablet and squinted. "Party of 3 parents and child," she said, sliding into a customer service smile. Her screen reflected in the polished counter a neat grid of names and roles. Under my name, visitor. Under Arliss, non-family guest. Duran chuckled. "Wristbands keep things orderly," he said like a tour guide. I felt the nudge of humiliation arrive and pass like cold water to the face. I took out my phone. "May I photograph the screen?" I asked. "Of course," Indira said, surprised. The photo caught the timestamp, booking ID, her name. Click. Evidence is memory with a clock. She lifted 2 wristbands, not quite the family color. Ours were a shade duller, almost. "These grant property access," she said. "Activities tie to the primary account." Duran nodded, already scrolling. Arliss turned the band like a coin he didn't recognize. I closed my hand over his for a second, a signal, not a rescue. No protest from me. Not today. I prefer to let patterns write themselves in public ink. When she affixed the bands, the scanner beeped, family visitor." I thanked her, used her name, and saved the photo to a folder I keep for things people swear are trivial. Duran clapped softly. "Great, now we can keep to schedule," he said. A television over the fireplace rolled through the resort's guest showcase, a cheerful loop of families holding paddleboards and golden retrievers. Our faces arrived and vanished. My shoulder was there, a sliver of a blue shirt. Arliss's arm existed only as a blur near the edge. A QR code winked in the corner, IMG 3942. I raised my phone and scanned before the frame changed. Saved. Teresa, the photographer, followed my line of sight. "That one's cropped odd," she said quietly, more to herself than to me. "We can always retake near the water tomorrow, better light." Duran, hearing his name even when it wasn't spoken, drifted over. "Big families are hard to frame," he told Teresa, joking for the room. The joke landed with a soft thud. I smiled. If someone will crop me publicly, they will crop me privately. The clip kept playing while I set a note, IMG 3942 lobby screen, 5:12 p.m. Indira side-eyed the TV and frowned just a little, the way conscientious people do when a detail bothers them but isn't theirs to fix. Arliss leaned near my ear. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm not breakable," I said. "I'm only collecting." Duran finished his tap dance at the counter and waved paper vouchers like a dealer. "Parents plus child for the boat tomorrow," he said. "Limits are firm. Notably, there was no watercraft clearance tied to Arliss's band. Logistics can be a scalpel." Carla stepped to me with a smile that worried the corners of her mouth. "Mom, do you want to sit your back?" I shifted my stance, pressed a thumb into the sore spot, and made room for a stroller. Adults make room. Arliss studied a framed topo map, giving me time to decide my response. I starred an email from Celine in legal COI named Insured Sierra Hearth LLC. I didn't open it. Leverage left unopened is sometimes louder. I watched Joran adjust his jaw for the group selfie tilting toward the best light. He staged the family and left two of us in shadow. I met Teresa's eye. She lifted her camera a fraction in a question. "Not yet," I mouthed. "Let the record show itself." A child squealed near the candy display. An old song crackled from a ceiling speaker. The doors sighed as another family arrived with damp towels and lake hair. The world, as always, did not stop for small cuts. I logged one more note and let the lobby swallow us into the evening. On the way out, I touched Arlise's new wristband where it didn't match the others. He slid his thumb over mine, a private handshake. "Tomorrow we build a rock castle with Chiron," I said. "Nothing fancy, just ours." I checked my photos, the screen with Indira's name, the code for IMG 3942, the time stamped in the corner. All small stones pocketed. Joran smiled across the lobby, but it didn't reach his eyes. Schedules make some men feel safe. Records make me feel safer. I decided against any complaint tonight. Saturday would offer better light for truth. I watched Carla tug a suitcase and lower her voice to Joran, and I remembered teaching her a knot that never slips. Knots hold, so do boundaries. I squared my shoulders and stepped into the lake, air cool and resin sweet, and promised myself this: no scenes, no begging, no speeches, just a ledger and then a pivot at dinner. Well, I followed the host through the lodge dining room past tall windows. Linen glowed ivory, forks lined up like little soldiers. My seat waited by the kitchen swing door where a strip of tape kept the hinge from screaming. A single plastic cup sat at my place while the others caught the light in real glass. I tested the chair, then angled it to spare my lower back each time the door breathed. From this spot, I could read the room which server owned the aisle where Joran liked to park his smile, whether Carla's eyes would soften when she met mine. I breathed through a thin draft of fryer heat and rosemary. Arlis touched the back of my shoulder, a quiet circle that meant I'm here. I nodded and set my bag down. The room hummed with talk. A busser laughed. I traced the path to the nearest exit out of habit and noted the riser where the trio would play tomorrow. I liked to know the currents before I weighed in. Calm. The place card by my plate didn't carry my name. It carried a roll, Service Access Overflow. The kitchen door sighed and skimmed my chair. Carla whispered, "Mom, are you okay?" I angled the seat, smiled, and let the staff pass. Joran raised his glass for the table and told the server we were all set. He did not look my way. I slid the card into my purse where I keep vaccination records and funeral programs. When the card forgets your name, I told myself, you remember it on paper. A server set water in front of me, plastic. I asked gently if I could have the same glass everyone else had. She checked her tablet. Per the ticket allergy flag, plastic only for the overflow seat. The word overflow did its work. "I understand," I said. "Could I see the ticket to keep the kitchen safe?" She turned the screen. I read the header room code timestamp and her name. On the napkin, I wrote 7F143 1918 plastic by note. The door breathed again. A tray brushed my shoulder. Arlis steadied the cup for me like a lighthouse keeper. Joran praised the chef and recited tomorrow's itinerary as if on payroll. Wristbands keep things orderly. He told nobody in particular. I opened my phone under the table, took one photo of the ticket, and time-stamped it. My face stayed pleasant. Proof doesn't need volume, it needs keeping. I tucked the napkin with the card, thought of church suppers, where names mattered, and let the moment pass. A neighboring guest tapped my shoulder and asked for extra napkins. "Not tonight," I said, and handed her the ones by my plate anyway. Her cheeks colored. She apologized. I reassured her with a smile that felt like muscle memory from church foyers and PTA halls. Across the table, Joran steered the conversation like a raft, never letting it drift my direction. Anytime I opened my mouth, he found a fresh topic: paddleboards, parking passes, the chef's gnocchi. Carla noticed, then looked away. People buy peace at strange prices on the first night. I chose a different purchase attention. I tracked patterns. The server with the braid avoided the aisle during soup. The kitchen door released heat like a tide every 30 seconds. When a toast rose from a birthday table, I let the applause pass through me. The trick learned over 6 decades is to breathe the sting into data. I touched Arliss's wristband. He rested his palm over my hand. Our grandson laughed at a joke I didn't catch. Preserve his light measure, the rest keep the ledger clean. I noted refills and who looked away first. Kind. Okay. After dinner, we rode the elevator and practiced quiet. A bellhop met us with a small envelope. Complimentary luggage tags for the activity lockers, he said. Inside were 2 tags with our room number and the word visitor, one for me, one for Arliss. I smiled and said we'd use both to label wet gear. He nodded and left. Behind the door, I set each tag flat inside my notebook and took a photo beside the room phone for a clean timestamp. Old habits turned slight into record. Arliss watched, then patted the bedspread. Sit a minute, he said. We listened to the compressor hum. Visitor. He tried the word. I squeezed his hand. Tomorrow, we're family print or no print. He passed me my reading glasses like a little ceremony. I texted myself the tag numbers and the door time, then zipped the notebook where I could reach it. I checked the schedule card Joran had circulated and circled the brief toast window. 30 seconds would be enough. Words don't need length. They need air timing and the truth. I pressed the tags, feeling the raised ink under my thumb, letting the evidence settle pulse. I moved the armchair so Arliss could stretch his knee. We set out tomorrow's clothes and clipped the wristbands to the lamp. I checked his meds, filled the plastic cup, and set it on a coaster. Small courtesies steady the heart. Before sleep, I drafted a note on my phone, a 30-second thank you to staff, and a line about families coming in many shapes. No declarations, no bait, just air and timing. If they cut the mic, the room would remember the tone. I set an alarm to practice once with Arliss as my metronome. He grinned and promised to clap at the right beat. On my nightstand lay the place card with its job title, the napkin with numbers and 2 neat tags that called us visitors. I looked at them like storm clouds from a porch present, possible not yet upon us. Then I turned out the light and held Arliss's hand. Tomorrow would tell us who we were here and who we weren't. Enough, sure. The lodge smelled of cedar and warm bread. Saturday light pooled on the long tables. I timed my breathing with the quartet's tuning and counted to 30, the same count I used when Arliss learned to climb stairs after his knee surgery. My plan was modest, a half-minute thank you to the staff, 1 line about safety for the kids, then sit. I wasn't here to take a bow. I was here to keep a good man from the edge of the frame. Arliss squeezed my hand. Half a minute, he murmured. Half a minute, I agree. Across the room, Joran scrolled his phone and practiced a host's grin, the one that never reached his eyes. A server set a stack of kitchen tickets near the water. When she placed plates, the corner of mine caught my eye. Next to my name, circled in red, someone had typed allergy use separate where. I had reported no allergy. My dish was the compostable kind, sturdy enough for the deck, and it matched last night's plastic cup. I asked gently whether the note was correct. She checked the tablet, apologetic. Per the ticket, ma'am. I let her off the hook with a smile. The problem wasn't in her hands. Through the pass window, Chef Lassie glanced up, reading the room the way chefs read ovens. I filed the ticket code and time the way I file birthdays and bill due dates in a private ledger that never forgets. The room found its rhythm forks, low laughter, the soft thud of the kitchen door behind my chair. Joran loved airtime the way some men love engines. He narrated the menu slipped in paddleboards for parents and child, and eyed the riser like it knew his name. Carla stayed in the safe water of weather and views. I let the pattern sketch itself, name replaced by role. Glass replaced by plastic. Now the dish replaced by safety. Patterns tell you where a story is going. Records help you steer it elsewhere. At 7:40, I rose with my water and a quiet smile. No tapping a glass, no clearing a throat. To the people who keep families safe and fed, thank you. I began a sentence small enough to stitch on a kitchen towel. The room answered with a hush more honest than any cheer. In the booth beyond the riser, the AV tech, her badge read, Brianna looked up and gave a thumbs up. I kept it short on purpose. You carry the weight so we can carry the memories. We see you. A few staff nodded. It felt right. Then my microphone died. No squeal, only the soft of unamplified air. On the booth monitor, a pale rectangle flashed. Later, I would learn it read, Mute, 1942. In the moment, I let the silence be a tool instead of a verdict. I finished the sentence with my own voice and sat. Arliss shifted as if to stand. I rested 2 fingers on his sleeve. Stay, Carla whispered. Maybe it's interference. I let her keep that story until the facts arrived. In the booth, Brianna's eyebrows climbed. She lifted her tablet and photographed the event log protocol, not drama. Conversation returned a piece at a time like light under a door. Joranne stepped into the crack with logistics. Paddle boards for parents and child at 9. Waivers are already assigned. It echoed last night the same subtraction of Arliss roll for name. I tasted paper with the ice and logged the moment by memory, the waiter refolding a dropped napkin, and the second the laughter came back like a faucet turned partway on. I kept my face neutral and my back straight. A straight back keeps a clear head. When dessert plates cleared, I opened my phone under the table and sent myself notes. Request event log 1942. Ask Lacey about the allergy flag. Toast complete without amplification. My thumb hovered, then I added a 4th. Explain to Kyron love makes family. Law protects it. Writing it first keeps me from speaking out of heat. Arliss leaned closer. Half a minute, he said again, proud. Half a minute did the job, I answered. My voice went soft at the end the way it does when I decide something that won't be reversed. On the way out, I paused by the booth. Thank you for your work, I told Brianna. She looked pained and honest. Your mic shouldn't have cut, she said quietly. I can print the log in the morning if you want it. I would, I said. I appreciate your professionalism. She exhaled like someone who'd been holding her breath through a whole song. It's all time-stamped. That's a kindness, I said. She nodded once, choosing which side of a small fight she was on. In the hallway, a server hurried past with a tray of real glassware. The pieces chimed bright as coins. I stepped aside and let the sound pass through me. I've learned not to chase respect with noise. I keep the ledger keeps me. Back in our room, I pressed the plate's rim flat and read the fine print compostable heat, safe made for convenience. I wrote the product code beside the order number and slid both behind the guidebook. Some people collect postcards. I keep receipts. Paper does not forget. I brushed my teeth and watched my face like an old friend. Lines tell truth if you let them. Did it land? Arliss asked from the bed, hopeful. It landed, I said. He turned off the lamp. In the dark, I listened to the building settle and the lake breathe against stone. The number 1942 wrote itself in my head like a street address. I filed it with the mismatched wristbands, the cropped photo, the plastic cup, the plate, and the way Joranne's smile never reached his eyes. Tomorrow would supply the words I refused to raise my voice for. Morning laid a bright coin on the lake. Kyron crouched near the dock, sorting stones like a jeweler. Arliss showed him the wrist angle, patient as ever. Flat and smooth, he said. Let the water do half the work. I counted skips 1, 2, 3 while sunscreen and pine lifted on the breeze. Carla hovered between us and her phone. Joranne hung back, pretending to check the day's activities, attention on control. Grandpa watched this one, Kyron called. He said it the way he says, Grandma, listen, a ritual we've kept. He drew his arm back. Joranne stepped in, voice too sharp for the morning. He's not your true grandpa. The sentence cracked air. Conversations on the lawn stuttered. A paddleboard bumped the pier. Kyron's stone slid from his fingers and tapped his sneaker. His chin twitched. He went still, trying to understand a rule that hadn't existed before. I knelt so our eyes met. Family is who shows up and stays. I told him steady as shore. That's Arliss. I didn't turn toward Joranne. The child didn't need a scene. I covered Kieran's hand with mine. Arliss lifted 2 fingers, a tiny salute. "I'm here, bud." Carla whispered her husband's name like a warning. I could have built a sermon, but lectures bruise kids standing in the blast radius. We needed a bridge. 3-skip challenge, I said simple. Winner picks dessert. I handed Kieran the flattest stone and counted with him, so his breath had something to follow. 1, 2. The 3rd hop barely kissed the surface, but it counted. Arliss clapped once quiet. Color returned to Kieran's face. He set his stance and tried. Joran muttered, "Words matter." I answered without heat. "So do actions, and let the lake take the rest of it." We walked back through the corridor of framed photographs, old boats, trestles, couples in hats. The glass turned the hallway into a long mirror. Joran strode ahead typing. Carla carried the towel like a task. I paused at a black and white boathouse reading the brass label as if that were my only interest and waited for the small square of light to come. It did. His screen flared in the glass. The preview line was backwards but legible, like cake lettering in a mirror. "Keep him away," followed by my husband's name, chopped by the edge. His thumb flicked. The message was gone. He didn't know I'd seen. I didn't lift my phone. Truth doesn't need a snapshot when it sits inside a pattern with time, place, and behavior aligned. At a quiet alcove, I stopped. "You will not define family to an 8-year-old, I said, voice low to stay hours. "We'll revisit this without him." He called it confusing expectations. I answered, "Your confusion isn't his to carry." His smile kept its teeth tucked in. Back with Kieran, we reset the day sandwiches on the balcony, napkins anchored with a salt shaker, a rest while the sun climbed, and a promise that tomorrow I'd thank the staff 30 seconds, no more. "Will Grandpa be there?" he asked sleepy. "Always," I said. He nodded like the world clicked back. After lunch, I checked on Arliss. He rubbed the mark the wristband had left. "I'm all right," he said, which often means I'm holding the line. I kissed the thin skin on his forearm where pulse answers faster than talk. "We're not changing who we are," I told him. "We're just going to name what's happening." He exhaled and the air between us settled. By late afternoon, the lawn filled with cornhole boards and lanterns. Brianna from the AV booth walked past with a dog. I thanked her again for last night's help. She said she'd have the printout for me in the morning. "It's time-stamped," she added. "Good," I said. Truth likes ink. She smiled like someone who knows paperwork can be a lighthouse. Before dinner, I opened my notebook and wrote the day like a log S4 at the dock witnesses present. 10:26 a.m. East Lawn. Boy froze. Recovered with game. Adult boundary held. Corridor reflection frame. 12 Hall. B keep him away scene at 11:03 a.m. I drew a small rectangle for the notification and shaded the cut where Arliss's name had been clipped. Circles around times. Patterns on paper become rails. Rails keep trains from wandering off. Carla knocked. "Dinner's at 7, she said, apology hovering without words. "We'll be ready," I told her. "We'll make it easy to do the right thing." She nodded grateful. It is hard work to be the bridge between a mother and a man who thinks he is a gate. The sun slipped behind the ridge and the water turned burnished as coins. We walked the path while dock lights clicked on one by one. Couples in sweaters lifted paper cups toward the first star. Arliss and I didn't say much. When you've lived long enough, quiet works better than speeches. In the corridor, the boathouse glass held a faint reflection. I touched the frame, grateful to a simple pain for telling the truth. My phone buzzed. A neat payment request from Joran lit the screen non-family add-ons. I let the phrase show itself, an invoice dressed as policy. The timing told its story. So did last night's silence. All felt it us. I closed the notebook. At the bottom of the page, I wrote and underlined, "Records beat rumors." Tomorrow would ask for more spine. Tonight it was enough that a child went to bed believing the most practical definition of family. I know love is the part you can choose and keep. Late sun sifted through the pines and turned the gravel path to gold. Arliss and I walked slow matching steps the way we do when the day has carried more weight than talk. We spoke of pancakes for Chiron of tomorrow's 32nd, thanks to the staff of stones that skipped like small miracles. I kept my eyes on patterns, not people, how labels had begun to push us out to the edges, how polite systems can be used like fences. The lodge hummed toward dinner, glass clinked, a shuttle sighed, and somewhere a child laughed hard enough to make me smile back at nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A neat blue notification slid across the screen, a Venmo request from Joran. The memo line read non-family add-ons itemized with activity fees Arliss had been excluded from and a host service charge for planning and coordination. I felt the sting, then let it pass. I tapped view, took screenshots, requester timestamp every line, and saved them to a folder with yesterday's visitor wristband image. I added a note, charges inconsistent with wristband exclusions, rooms already prepaid by me. Then measured as a level, I wrote to him, I'll settle our ledger after I review the folio with the front desk. He answered quickly. Simpler if you just accept. I replied. Simpler isn't the same as accurate, and ended the thread. I wasn't going to fight in text. Records, not rumor. We cut across the lot to fetch sweaters before the evening breeze took the warmth. A yellow slip flapped beneath our wiper, bright as a dare. Visitor to HR, limit the ticket, read though we were staying on property. I took 2 photos, one wide with the slip on the glass, one close with code and time, then slid the paper into a clear sleeve in my notebook. Around us, wind rocked the lake pines and left the other SUVs in a small forest of overnight hang tags. We hadn't been issued one. That fit the pattern. Arliss angled toward the office. I'll talk to them. I touched his sleeve. We'll do it my way. Not because his way is wrong, but because a tidy stack of facts is quieter and heavier. The lobby was busy golf shirts, damp ponytails, the soft racket of vacation. At the desk, I asked for 2 things, in a tone that invited cooperation, not conflict: a copy of the folio header on our reservation, and the parking record attached to our plate. The clerk's brows knit. I can fix this right now. Thank you, I said, and I'll still need the printouts for my records. I didn't raise my voice. I explained once that the visitor label had traveled from a check-in screen to a parking system. She apologized, printed, stamped, updated, and handed me an overnight tag and both pages. I thanked her, slid the papers behind the yellow ticket, and breathed. When policy works, it's a door. When it doesn't, paper opens it. In the lounge, Joran performed a soft show for anyone within earshot. Family-only water slots tomorrow, he told a couple on the next couch, as if he were a cruise director. Carla sat small beside him, hands around a glass she didn't drink. I ordered tea and texted myself a checklist, cross-check, Venmo memo versus folio charges. Attach parking printout. Ask accounting to confirm host of record. The pianist slipped into something easy. I sent Chiron a photo of a round slate blue lucky stone and promised pancakes shaped like trout. He sent a fish emoji from Carla's phone. The screen warmed my hand. That was the point, keep the child's world intact while the adults arranged their shadows. Back upstairs, we hung the new overnight tag on the mirror. It made Arliss grin like a boy who got the right jersey at last. I filed the photos and PDFs into my secure email with subject lines I'd recognize months from now. S6 Venmo, non-family add-ons, SAT 1710, S16 parking visitor ticket, SAT 1805 front desk folio, header parking update stamped. I wrote one line for myself for tomorrow's dinner. We settle ledgers publicly only when everyone holds the same numbers. If life has taught me anything, it's that dignity has a ledger too. You keep it the way you keep books, carefully and in ink. We stepped onto the balcony to watch the ridge go from copper to violet. Boats stitched small wakes across the darkening water. You okay? Arliss asked. I'm steady, I said, and I was. These were not new games, they were old ones with better software. The cure remained the same calm paper witness. I set an alarm to pick up the AV event log Brianna promised, then placed my notebook by the door with the yellow ticket tucked where I'd see it at breakfast. We turned in early. Somewhere in the hallway, a suitcase wheel ticked like a metronome. The lodge sighed and settled. Near midnight, my phone chimed again, a system ping, small but wrong. I checked the app for our room. The passcode had updated at 017. I hadn't requested it. The door remembered, so would the hallway camera. I took a timestamp screenshot, muted every alert, and lay back beside the man whose title had been challenged, but whose place had not. Sleep, I told us both. We keep our own code. The corridor at that hour felt like it had chosen silence. Sconce lights hummed over patterned carpet as Arliss and I turned the last corner. I steadied my breath, tapped the keypad, and waited for the green wink I'd seen a dozen times this trip. Red. I tried again, unhurried. Red again. I lifted my phone toward the tiny lens and photographed the faceplate with its angry LED, and in the same frame the hallway clock above the ice alcove. 12:17 a.m. The number looked intentional, even if it wasn't. Third try locks it, I said. A room down the hall opened. A guest assessed us, then moved on. I nodded back, no emergency. Inconvenience is not an emergency. Pattern is. I checked our booking email, no notice of a code change. I tried the secondary number from check-in. Red. I took one more photo to mark sequence attempt lockout, then turned us to the lobby. Should we wake Carla? Arliss asked. No, I said. We'll wake the system. The night manager's name tag read Jonah. His professionalism had a zipped-up calm I appreciate after midnight. He offered to walk us up with a master token. Yes, I said, and I'll need the access log for our door between 11:30 and 12:30, plus the source of any change at 17 past. My tone stayed friendly. Courtesy opens more doors than a key. He printed a thin slip. Code updated Ziju 17, he read. Source staff console. We'll flag it for morning, he said, and noted my cell on the request. Upstairs, his master token blinked the lock awake. Inside, I filed the slip behind the parking ticket from earlier. My folder was beginning to look like a quiet spine. Jonah radioed for Brianna from ITAV, the tech who had been in the booth at dinner. She arrived with steady eyes and a practical ponytail. I thanked her and asked for 2 items. The booth event sheet from last night, including the mic cut and the door log in the morning, with the station that pushed the update. I can print the booth log now, she said. Door logs need security to sign. She scrolled, then nodded. Here. The paper fed out. 1942, she read. Action mute. Source local. She winced. I didn't. Thank you, I said. Please leave the door log at the desk by 8. When they left, the room settled. Arliss eased into a chair and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Every time we think it's the last odd thing he said. Not bitter, just tired. I tucked the AV sheet behind the parking slip and the lobby photo that cropped me to a shoulder. Odd is an incident, I said. This is a pattern. He nodded once. The nod was enough. My phone chimed a payment reminder from Joran, then a calendar nudge for the paddleboard slot labeled Parents and Child. I let both pass like boats I had no reason to board. Instead, I opened an email to myself and attached the pictures. The red LED at 12:17, Jonah's slip, Brianna's print, the hallway clock. Subject passcode 0017 plus AV 1942. I added names, times room number, and the phrase that keeps me steady, records beat rumors. I dimmed the screen. Do you want me with you in the morning? Arliss asked, voice gone soft with long use. Sleep, I said. I'll get the paper while the coffee is hot. He toed off his shoes. I touched his wrist the way I had in the lobby when our bands didn't match. Thank you for being here, I told him. It matters to say simple truths. Dawn came silver over the lake, then turned the pines gold. I dressed, laced my shoes, and set a reminder for the 7:30 dinner where I planned to speak with no mic at all. 3 small tasks followed: pick up the door log, confirm with Brianna that the booth entry had been archived, and text Kyron about our rock castle. 2 towers today, I wrote. A castle emoji arrived from Carla's phone. 8-year-old optimism can steady an older woman's resolve. At the counter, a clerk checked the tray and handed me a sealed envelope. Inside, the door log with the time and the alias of the station that pushed the update. I thanked her, asked for a photocopy, and slid both into the sleeve that had become a tidy archive of the weekend's quiet paperwork. Back in the room, I photographed the packet, then set everything on the table and drew a small box around the day ahead. Breakfast with Arliss, stones with Chiron, a calm afternoon, a dinner where I would thank the staff, again unamplified and unmoved by optics. I did not intend to argue with anyone. I intended to place facts where they could be seen. By mid-morning, I had booked 2 notaries for the next day in Truckee in case the truth needed a stamp no one could wave away. It is not a threat to prepare. It is a kindness to clarity. I tucked the confirmations into my folder and watched a grandfather swing a little girl on the lawn until she squealed. It landed like a benediction. Love is a verb. So is protect. There will be a time soon to sit at a table, face my son-in-law, and lay out the sequence photo log action. No raised voice, no theatrics, just a straight line. For now, I walked Arliss to the balcony and handed him his coffee. The lake threw light at the mountains, and he held his cup with both hands like a man receiving warmth. I set one more timer on my phone, a small private promise. At 7:30, I would speak for 30 seconds, with no technology between my mouth and the room. And if the power tried to flicker again, it would only illuminate what was already true. Morning light braided silver into the lake as Chiron and I followed the quiet cove east of the dock. The stones there are kind, flat, cool, ready to be chosen. We hunted for skippers by color and weight while Arliss timed our throws, counting under his breath like a coach trying not to steal the moment. I kept my tone gentle, my eyes open. Today had 2 jobs: protect the child's joy, put paper under the weekend. Pancakes later, I told Kieran. A short thank you at dinner. He asked Will, Grandpa, stand wit. We built a castle from what the lake offered. The base was gray ovals, the mid-tier pale speckled coins, the crown a smooth black disc that caught the sun like a lens. What we build, we protect, I said. He pressed his palm to the top stone, sealing a treaty only children can write. On my phone, I set the dinner toast for 7:30 p.m., kept the invite list small, and let a private reminder whisper confirm boundary language. Keep the charitable fallback ready if grown-ups choose pettiness over decency. At a patio table later, Chiron drew battlements on the back of a trail map, while I opened a clean 1-pager on my tablet. Acknowledgement of hosting and participation. Plain words, no heat. It named the event, the dates, the place. It clarified roles without granting anyone a gatekeeper crown. I added 2 lines learned the hard way. No party may restrict a minor's contact with named family without a court order. Financial contributions do not confer custodial or moral authority. I saved a PDF to my secure... I booked the resort notary for early afternoon. Glass walls made the business center alcove feel like a fishbowl, but privacy is sometimes a posture, not a room. I presented ID signed and initialed and asked for a jurat with date and time. The notary's eyes paused on the sentence about minors and contact. She nodded without comment, stamped once then again on a certified copy I requested for redundancy. I slid the original behind the AV log from last night. A spine grows 1 vertebra at a time, and... The mobile notary arrived an hour later. Tidy briefcase, quiet shoes. We met in the lobby's side corner beneath a black and white photograph of the lake in winter. I signed a short waiver of misrepresentation tied to trip logistics, simple clarifier introductions of host or family-only privileges cannot be used to exclude legally recognized family or to mislabel elders as visitors. 2 different stamps, 2 separate logs. I checked both seals for legibility and wrote each commission number next. Carla found me under the eaves where pine shade cooled the stone. I handed her a sealed copy. Housekeeping for later, I said. Not a fight for today. She turned the envelope in her hands like a brittle leaf. Thanks, Mom. I did not hand one to Joanne. Timing is part of truth. Delivery is part of mercy. Arliss and I returned to the waterline. The castle still stood defying a playful breeze that tried to tilt the black crown. Chiron tucked a tiny white pebble at the base his guard. "He needs a name," he said. "Call him Steady," I offered. He approved. I took a photo for him, not for proof. Then out of habit, I archived a second shot with time and location turned on. Patterns deserve witnesses, and witnesses help children remember what safety looks like. We ate grilled cheese at the patio. Grill laughed when Kieran Straw found every bubble in his lemonade and talked about the evening plan, a short thanks, then ice cream. On my phone, I opened the starred email from earlier in the week, the certificate of insurance naming the actual host, not the person narrating the weekend, but the property LLC. That line would matter. Paper can't teach manners, but it can instruct outcomes, and it often does when tempers cool and numbers speak. Quiet power is still Po. By late afternoon, I laid the weekend's pieces on the room table, mismatched wristbands, the cropped lobby photo, the yellow parking ticket coded visitor, the AV print with mute 1942, the note about the 017 door update, the acknowledgement with stamp 1, the waiver with stamp 2. Arliss stood beside me reading without asking. "That's a lot," he said. "It's enough," I answered. Enough to steady the ground under us. He nodded like a man who has learned the cost of dignity and is willing to pay in. Before we dressed for dinner, I stopped by the business center to scan the 2 stamped pages to my secure drive and to a fresh thumb drive labeled for Chiron years on. I'm not dramatizing the weekend for him. I'm preserving the record that says we stood up straight. If memory blurs as it does, paper will lend it glasses. That, too, is a kind of love. Okay, near 5, the wind shifted off the lake, and guests turned long toward dinner. I put the packet away, smoothed my skirt, and touched Arliss's wrist, the way I say 5 sentences at once. "We're fine," I told him out loud. "We're ready," I told myself. I was not hunting a spotlight. I was laying a line a child could follow home. I set my phone to silent and steadied my breath. The evening would meet a steadier me, now. Accounting keeps Sunday hours behind a sliding glass window, the kind that reminds you to keep your voice level. I handed over our booking ID and asked for the certificate tied to tonight's banquet. Simple, courteous nothing for anyone to bristle at. The clerk typed, glanced at the screen, then at me, then at the office printer, as it warmed up like a cautious animal. I smiled and rested my palms on the counter. Arliss waited to the side, easy in his stance, a quiet backstop. The printer chirped. A sheet slid into the tray. I asked kindly for a stamped copy and a PDF to my email for my files. Paper is not drama. Paper is order. Across the top of the form, the proof arrived without fanfare. Named Insured Sierra Hearth LLC. My mailing address beneath it clean and familiar. Certificate holder lodge events. The policy number, effective dates, covered activities, and tonight's event block matched our reservation. The resort showed as additional insured in the schedule with their address in neat type. I read left to right like a ledger. No triumph on my face, only relief in my ribs. "Could you date stamp that bottom corner?" I asked. The clerk obliged, steady hand, fresh ink. I filed the original in my folio behind the AV log and the midnight slip, then confirmed the PDF hit my inbox. Quiet vindication is the best kind. It doesn't crow. It simply stands. We crossed to the patio where late sun glazed the lake and cooled the pine shade. A neighbor from our community fund, who also pastors a tiny church by the river, strolled up with a grin you can't manufacture. "Good to see you, Granddad," he told Arliss, first a hand to his shoulder that said history, not performance. "How's Chiron's rock castle?" Arliss chuckled, gave the report like any proud man still standing, newly guarded by a white pebble. Carla's breath left her in a soft ribbon. People nearby heard the word Granddad with no quotation marks, and a few nods followed like small lanterns being lit. I didn't add a sentence. Real recognition doesn't need curation. Joran appeared with a smooth tone meant for bystanders. "I've been hosting Managing Optics," he said, as if the weekend were a brand. I opened my phone to the certificate and tilted it so only he could read. "This policy carries the event," I said gently. "Please route logistics through accounting so staff aren't mixed. No edge, no sermon." He shifted, looked past me toward the lawn, fished for a different subject. "I'm just trying to keep things simple." "Accuracy is simple," I answered. "It prevents discomfort later." The pastor excused himself with a kind pat to Arliss's arm and a wave to me, leaving a trail of ordinary respect in his wake. Inside, I met the events coordinator to align the small things that become big if ignored. The easel sign would read, "Family Dinner, hosted by Reservation Holder." No bios, no spotlight paragraphs, no curated about lines. At the podium, I asked for staff names in print so my thank you could be precise. Spelling matters. People remember when you get them right. We checked the room layout, no seat by a swinging door this time, and confirmed the glassware counts. I requested a neutral podium card identical to the easel language. The coordinator nodded, grateful for a guest who wanted clarity instead of a microphone. Back in the room, I assembled a slim packet that felt less like a weapon and more like a spine. Wristband photo, cropped lobby image with its QR saved, plastic cup code from the ticket, yellow parking citation with the correction stapled behind it, AV print with mute 1942 circled, the slip about 017 and the passcode change, and now the certificate that named the host without varnish or volume. I scanned the packet to my encrypted drive and sent a note to Council Tahoe Contemporaneous Records attaching PDFs. Arliss watched, then set 2 tea bags in mugs as if setting anchors. "We're steady," he said. "We are?" I agreed. We carried the tea to the patio and found Kyron adding one last pebble to his castle, like a crown for a quiet king. He leaned into Arliss without looking up the way children lean into the furniture they trust. I set a silent reminder for the evening, no mic. A room can mute equipment. It can't mute the truth that arrives with calm paper and a steady voice. When Kyron asked if the castle would still be there after dinner, I said, "If the wind is kind and the stones remember their job." He nodded solemnly as though we'd entered into a pact with the shoreline. In a way we had. The sun slid lower, polishing the water into brushed metal. I checked the time, closed my phone, and placed the packet in my bag. There would be no spectacle tonight, just sentences that land where they belong and documents that say what they say without adjectives. If anyone wished to argue, they'd have to argue with dates and names and fields that don't bend. I rested a hand on Arliss's wrist the way I always do our private semaphore. He answered by covering my hand with his. "Ready," he said. Ready meant more than dinner. It always has. I arrived early, walking the edge of the carpet the staff had taped down to protect the parquet. The room smelled faintly of cedar cleaner and warm bread. At the back wall, the podium waited beneath a small sconce, its card already slotted in place. I checked the table tent with the staff names Lassie from the kitchen, Keisha and Omar on service, Brianna in the booth. I traced the letters with my eyes the way you check a lock twice before bed. No microphone requested as agreed. Brianna caught my glance from the booth and lifted a thumb, a small, steadying yes. Arliss guided Kyron to our table and helped him fold a napkin into a sail. I counted the water glasses, real glass all around, and breathed out even and slow. We had come. We had endured. And now we would finish with the kind of composure that can't be cropped out of a frame. I centered my shoulders and let the noise of arriving guests pass around me like a river around a stone. When the door opened again, Duran's cologne reached us a step before he did. He moved toward the podium with the casual stride of a man who expects gravity to lean his way. But the room had already been told the truth. The card on the lectern read in clear black type, "Family Dinner, hosted by Sierra Hearth LLC." He slowed as if a pebble had lodged under his shoe. Guests glanced up from their bread plates and read what I had read. A small murmur rippled along the front row. I didn't smile. I lifted my water to the events coordinator instead and said, "Thank you for the accuracy." Duran recovered into a smooth half shrug, but the momentum had shifted. Lassie rolled out from the kitchen to welcome the room. On behalf of our team and per the certificate on file, she said, "We thank our host of record and we thank our staff." She read the names without stumbling. Keisha gave a little wave. Omar grinned. Across the table, Carla's shoulders dropped by a fraction as if a strap had finally been unbuckled. Arliss kept his palm at Kyron's back, an anchor more than a touch. When the moment opened for gratitude, I stood without the microphone. 3 sentences as promised. Thank you for feeding families and keeping children safe near deep water. Thank you for the quiet work that lets people make memories. And to my grandson who built a castle of stones this morning, what we build, we protect. The room answered with a clean, unforced applause that sounded like rainfall on a roof. I sat. Kyron's chin rose just a little the way boys hold their names when they hear them honored. Teresa the photographer had drifted left of the podium and quietly captured the card, then my short thank you, then the way Brianna marked the time on her console. The lobby camera, indifferent and faithful, framed the easel sign at the door. None of it was a performance. It was a ledger of moments. Accuracy becomes memory when ordinary witnesses hold it still. Joran tried a soft reframe at a side table, the tone people use when they want history to be a rumor. I handled the arrangements, he said to a couple who'd admired the centerpieces. I met his eyes once. Accounting has what it needs. No heat, no afterword. The events coordinator slipped me a stamped folio header for the banquet proof of how the numbers were set. I placed it with the certificate in my folio and closed the zipper as if closing a chapter. Dinner settled into the easy work of passing bowls and pouring tea. Keisha refilled water without splashing. Omar exchanged a cracked plate without fuss. The small things done right knit a room together better than any speech. I kept my voice light with Kyron asked about the white pebble he'd placed at the base of the castle. Guard duty, he said, even when we sleep. Especially then, I answered. As dessert plates cleared, I knelt beside him so he didn't have to crane his neck. You did great tonight. He glanced toward the door toward the lake he knew waited in the dark. Will it still be standing in the morning? If the wind is kind and the stones remember their job, I said, and if not, we build it again. He nodded satisfied in the way children are when the answer gives them something to do instead of something to fear. On our way out, I paused at the podium one last time and read the card again, not for triumph, but for calibration. Words matter most when they are simple and true. I slid the photo Teresa offered into my folio with the stamped header and the certificate. Paper doesn't shout. Paper endures. In the foyer, the air was cooler. I felt Arliss's hand find mine, the old choreography of 2 people who have stood in more rooms than either of them can count, and chosen, again and again, not to escalate what time will expose. Behind us, Brianna dimmed the sconces. Ahead, the door to the night opened on the sound of lake water striking the rocks in a patient rhythm. We stepped into it steady as the shoreline. The napkin sail rode in my bag like a small flag proof that a child's evening had been kept whole. Numbers were next, and numbers don't blink. At settlement, the folio and the memo on Joran's phone would have to meet each other in daylight. I did not feel eager for that. I felt ready. The difference matters. Readiness keeps the voice level and the hands kind. I pressed the folio under my arm, tucked Kyron's napkin sail into my bag, and let the room close behind us like a well-oiled hinge. After dinner, the foyer thinned to the soft scrape of carts and the hush of closing doors. Arliss and I walked one slow loop beneath the framed trail maps. Kyron went up with Carla for pajamas and a last cartoon. I pulled my phone and set a morning reminder folio review 9 a.m. In my notes, I listed the pieces. COI podium card photo, AV log with 1942 parking correction door code, slip the yellow ticket, the Venmo request. We balanced numbers in sunlight, I told Arliss. He nodded the way people nod. Accounting opened on time. I arrived with a neat packet and a steady tone. Booking ID, I said, sliding the page forward and the certificate tied to the banquet. The clerk, a woman with a navy nameplate and sensible shoes, asked if I needed a reprint of last night's charges. Final folio by subledger, I answered activity wristband billing map and any adjustments on our profile. I added the Venmo screenshot that called us non-family add-ons, set beside the podium card photo that said the opposite. The printer warmed, paused, and then delivered the paper we needed. Line by line, the folio told its story. Activity fees had been comped under the event hosted by Sierra Hearth LLC. Arliss's watercraft exclusion carried no charges. There was no such thing in their system as a host service line. I drew the Venmo memo next to the folio so their columns touched. "These charges don't match your records," I said evenly. The clerk circled the discrepancies and initialed the margin with the date and time. She escalated politely to events. The lead stepped out with a calm face and a single sheet. "We're issuing a same-day credit," she said, "to reverse a stray visitor parking code and to clarify host of record on the banquet." The memo cited the policy number on the certificate. She asked if a PDF would be helpful. "Helpful and sufficient," I said. She printed one signed copy as well. I did not look around the lobby for Joran. Numbers don't blink, and I prefer conversations that also don't. At the front desk, HR opened our guest profile. The screen reflected in the plexi shield like a pale lake. The classification reads, "Visitor," the agent said. I waited without flinching. "We'll correct to family reservation holder and add a policy note." Keys tapped. The agent printed a slip with a watermark. "Do not downgrade classification without written approval from reservation holder." I placed it behind the parking correction and the AV log, a spine of simple facts tightening. By the lounge, Joran appeared with the light smile he uses when he wants a private rewrite. "We can settle this quietly if you just accept the request," he said, glancing at my folio. I laid the stamped folio and the signed credit memo on the table between us, not as a performance, but as a bridge he could choose to cross. "Private requests don't override public records," I said. "You may withdraw your memo." Carla stood near a fern, arms crossed, tired in the honest way. Joran muttered about confusion. We stopped by the parking kiosk on our way out. The attendant scanned the yellow ticket and frowned at the code. "Visitor tag," he said. "That's been corrected," I replied, handing over the HR print. He nodded, keyed an override, and the receipt spit out with a decisive clack. "Void host classification corrected." I slid it behind the credit memo where paper could keep it company. Outside, the morning had the clean brightness that only mountain towns know after a busy weekend. In the lobby, Brianna waved from the booth, 2 fingers a quiet, grateful salute from one keeper of logs to another. I thanked her for the timestamp the night before. She pointed to a sealed envelope at the desk security had left the door access printout for me to collect. I added it to the stack without commentary. Arliss touched my elbow, a question. "Almost done," I said. Then pancakes. "Kyron found us before we reached the cafe." He held up a photo on Carla's phone, the stone castle still standing in the morning light. "Guard duty worked," he said. "It did," I answered. "What we build, we protect." We ordered pancakes, big as skillets, and while we waited, I emailed the day's documents to my counsel with one line in the subject, "Tahoe Folio vs. Venmo resolved. Credits issued, classification fixed." By the time the plates arrived, the knot in my chest had become a simple tie you loosen before driving home. I didn't need an apology to eat breakfast. I needed a child to feel safe, a husband to feel seen, and the numbers to tell the same story no matter who repeated it. When the bill came, I checked it once, tipped well, and closed the leather folder gently, the way you close a book you plan to keep. On our way back through the foyer, Joran hovered near the fireplace as if stones might prompt him. "So we're good?" he asked. I kept my voice even. "We're accurate. If you choose to correct your request, send cancel, and we'll have clean ledgers." He studied his screen. Moments later, my phone chimed, "Request canceled." I saved the notice, put the phone away. Dignity travels lighter when the math agrees. The fire ring hummed low, a circle of patient heat against the mountain cold. Kyron was asleep upstairs. Carla had left his nightlight on. Pine sap snapped like small decisions. I chose a seat where the walkway camera angled over my shoulder, its red pinprick steady. Arliss folded beside me a quiet post in the flicker, more anchor than audience. Across from us, Duran studied the flames as if they were screens he could swipe. I kept my hands wrapped around a paper cup of hot water and said very little. He started with logistics the way men do when apologies would cost too much. Check out at 10. Tips in envelopes. Keep things simple. He smiled for no one. Carla tugged the edge of a lodge blanket and stared into the orange core, her silence not soft anymore. The glow made truth harder to hide. I let the small talk burn down to coals. If there was going to be a reckoning, it would arrive in ordinary words, not a scene. Pressed by his own need to be right, Duran leaned forward. Look, if I hadn't tamped down the mic and those guest labels, it would have been chaos. The sentence landed like a coal on dry moss. I lifted my eyes once. You tamped them down. He exhaled like a man relieved to have the line on record. Somebody had to keep optics clean. The walkway camera blinked. Ambient audio carries farther at night. I did not pounce. I let the sentence sit in the air where it could not be retrieved. Silence is sturdier than argument when the truth has weight. I texted myself a single line, his exact phrasing, and the time, then put the phone away. You don't define a child's vocabulary for family, I said, level and slow, and you don't erase elders with a setting. He tried a laugh that didn't travel. From this minute, I added, you stop, or the paperwork continues without you. Arliss shifted not to threaten, but to be seen. The wind lifted an ember. It drifted bright and brief, then vanished. Carla broke before he did, but not in the way he expected. Mom, she said, voice even I knew. I let it happen because it kept the peace. It wasn't peace. She turned her face to me, not to beg, but to choose. I won't participate anymore. Kyron needs the truth, and so do I. I nodded once. Then you'll show him in small ways, over time. She slid her phone onto the table screen down. A tiny gesture, a large correction. Duran crossed his arms. You're leveraging money. I shook my head. I'm leveraging truth. Money keeps score. I laid out 3 conditions spoken only once uninterrupted contact with Kyron is scheduled. No more, not your true grandpa talk, not by tone or hint. Administrative accuracy going forward, no visitor downgrades, no ghost settings on microphones or doors. There's nothing to win here, I said, only something to stop losing. The fire settled as if it too preferred plain rules. I sent the email I had drafted days ago and held for the moment, discipline required subject line release letter Tahoe weekend. Council's auto-acknowledgement returned in seconds, escrow conditions armed, directives will file if exclusion resumes. Timestamp 2341. I slid the phone back into my pocket and relaxed my shoulders. Structure is not menace. It is mercy with rails. We sat until the logs turned to a steady red. When the chill finally reached our knees, I stood. Inside, I asked Jonah for a simple note. Guests at fire ring, 2250-2345, no disturbances. He printed it without fuss. I tucked the slip behind the door access request and thanked him for the kind order of small systems. On the way to the elevator, the lake lay black as polished stone. Arliss and I walked the edge of its reflection without speaking. At our door, the code worked on the first try. A modest grace. I set the folio on the dresser and looked at our grandson's drawing folded beside it, a little stone castle with a white pebble guard. What we build, we protect. I whispered into the quiet, which answered like a promise. In the morning, choices would meet calendars. Schedules tell their own truths. Tonight, the embers had done enough work. Duran stared at the glass door at our reflections, moving like a family he recognized only as silhouettes. You're making me the villain, he said. I kept my voice at fire ring level. I'm describing behavior. You can choose a different one in the morning. Carla didn't look at him. I'm taking Kieran to pancakes at 8, she said. Mom and Arliss are coming. He tried one more angle. You could have talked to me privately. I let it rest. I did, I said. At the lake, in the corridor at the desk. You liked it private when it was mutes and labels. Repairs happen in daylight. He opened his mouth, then closed it. We cleaned the circle like any guests. Cups, binned, blanket, folded. On the stairs, Carla touched my arm. Thank you for not shaming me, she said. I'll show up. That's the apology that has weight, I answered. She nodded and went upstairs to kiss a sleeping boy on the hairline where Worry stood. Back in our room, Arliss leaned on the balcony rail. Think the castle will hold, he asked. Maybe I said. If not, we'll build it again. He smiled the way men do when forgiveness feels like work. I placed the fire ring note with the others. COI folio credit memo AV log. Parking void classification. Fix the notary stamps the stone castle photo. A small ledger. I turned out the lamp and let the quiet finish what the embers began. Dawn laid a pale ribbon across the lake, the kind of light that makes even mistakes look quiet. Kyron and I walked the short path to his stone castle, our footsteps soft in the pine duff. He chose one last capstone, a flat gray disc, and pressed it into place with both palms. Will it stay? He asked. Long enough? I said. Arliss took a picture from the path. I promised Kyron I'd send him a photo each visit so the castle could live in his room, even when the wind had its turn. What we build, we protect. At the lobby, the morning staff was fresh and unhurried. I asked for a quiet table near the window and laid out a single page titled, Checkout Scheduling Order. No speeches. Just lines you can measure weekly video calls, alternating weekends, holiday rotations, drop-off times, and a clause that forbids anyone from telling an 8-year-old who counts as family. The clerk time-stamped a received for reference note. I signed as reservation holder. Carla signed acknowledgement. When Joran declined to sign, the clerk wrote present and informed beside his name. I didn't push him. The calendar would. Mobile Notary 2 met us by the glass. She'd stamped pages yesterday. Today she witnessed a letter of intent I'd prepared weeks ago with counsel. It was not a threat. It said in plain language that if interference resumed, if the calls were blocked, if Arliss was painted as not true, if labels slid back to visitor, I would pursue grandparent visitation protections allowed by law. The desk logged a courtesy copy for the record date time initials. I handed Carla her copy and said, This is structure, not a fight. She nodded and tucked it into her bag like a promise she meant to keep. We sat while accounting pulled our folio and attached the corrections from yesterday classification fix, parking void credit memo referencing the COI. Security added no further incidents. Joran muttered about optics. Optics end where records begin. I said not unkindly. There was nothing left for him to invoice, nothing left to extract. Numbers have a way of finishing sentences. The clerk slid me a neat packet with a staple through the corner and a faint cedar smell from the lobby shelves. I asked Carla to step aside near the map of the lake. I outlined the bridge we'd spoken about Kyron's educational and travel fund available now. Broader participation later after 6 months of clean adherence to the schedule and the respect clauses. Automatic pause if gatekeeping returned. No figures in a lobby, only dates and conditions. This isn't leverage. I said it's scaffolding. It holds what matters while we relearn how to stand. Carla swallowed and said Friday at 6 we'll call, and no more visitor labels. No more erasing, I answered. We shook on that like two women making grown-up repairs. At the parking loop, the mountain air smelled like sun-warmed sap. Kyron ran to me, backpack thumping. I knelt to his eye level and handed him a tiny labeled pouch, First Stone Tahoe. He opened it with a seriousness that made Arliss look away for a second. It's smooth, he said, like the lake. Keep it where you can find it, I told him. If the castle falls, you'll still have this. Carla buckled him in. She didn't rush the goodbye. Grandpa's coming to Pancake Day, Kyron asked. Always, I said. Arliss touched the door frame like men do when words are too big for the moment and said simply, See you Friday, champ. We circled to the overlook above the highway before heading west. The lake flashed like a silver coin. Arliss laced his fingers with mine. I scrolled through the folder one last time. The certificate that said who hosted the AV log with mute 1942, the corrected wristbands, the yellow ticket voided the midnight door slip, the schedule signed in a lobby that smelled faintly of cedar. Each piece was ordinary on its own. Together they made a frame no one could crop. I tagged the archive family kept and closed it with a quiet tap. On the drive, Arliss asked, "Do you feel finished?" "No," I said. "I feel anchored." We talked about tomatoes and a new kite for Chiron, about telling the truth in small, repeatable ways. The road climbed. The pines gave way to bright sky. I pictured my grandson's hands pressing that flat gray disc and the way he waited for my answer. Long enough, I'd said, long enough to teach him that belonging can be built. Long enough for quiet to win over noise when you give it facts to stand on. Back at the lodge entrance, Joran stood under the porte cochere pretending to check his phone. He looked up as we rolled by, then looked down again. Carla lifted her hand small and steady. I answered with a nod. We didn't need another word. The schedule would speak every week. The stone would speak whenever Chiron touched it. The packet would speak whenever anyone tried to forget. Consequences had arrived without spectacle and taken the seat where posturing used to sit. Before the bend in the highway swallowed the roof line, I caught a last sliver of the lake between trees and let the weekend settle where it belonged, not as a feud, but as a ledger of choices. If someone tells a child who belongs and who doesn't, you show them a better frame. You build it in daylight. You keep the records. You protect the small hands. The rest washes away like wake on water. I'm a mother and a grandmother, and here's what this weekend taught me. Set boundaries early. Protect the child first, and let truth stand on paper, not on volume. Quiet strength isn't silence. It's choosing dignity, taking notes and acting in daylight. If someone tries to crop you out, build a better frame and keep going. What about you? Where have you had to defend family with calm, not noise? If this story touched you, drop a 1 or tell me where you're watching from. Didn't like it. Say why I read every comment. And if you want more true human stories, please subscribe to the channel.